Welcome to this series of video tutorials where I'm going to show you how to model the Shaker Table project using Fusion 360. In this series of tutorials, I'm going to assume that you are new to using Fusion 360. However, I am going to demonstrate a number of advanced techniques so that you can experience the power of many of the features that Fusion 360 offers. When you first open Fusion, your screen will look like this. Now, Fusion's pretty good at getting this right, but it's just good to make sure that we are using metric units before we start. So we just go to Design and just make sure that we're using millimeters. If not, you can just change it and then you apply and then we'll move on. It's also good practice just to save before you start. So I'm going to call this Shaker Table 2. And I've already created a location called Shaker Table, but it will also just save into a default location. You can look at that in your own time. Okay, so if you're used to parametric modeling software, the screen, the screens have a lot of similarities. So we start on a screen like this. We've got our navigation cube up here, and we can also change our views slightly. I do prefer perspective view. Now to start out, we're just going to start with the leg, but I'm going to use a sort of a semi-parametric approach to this. So instead of putting in dimensions, I am going to set up some parameters before I start. So I go up to Modify, then Change Parameters, and I'm going to put in some user parameters. So I'm going to put in tabletop width, and that's going to be 450. What it means is I can change it in here later and it will start to adjust things in the program rather than having to go through and change everywhere where I use this dimension. The other one I want is tabletop depth. And in this case, it's going to be the same, 450. I also want leg length is going to be another useful one. That's 600. But again, I can change that later. And I also want leg thickness. That's going to be 35. And finally, another useful one is just going to be material thickness. And that's 19, which is a standard dimension. That's just going to save us a lot later on, because apart from the legs, all of the material that we're using are generally going to be 19 millimeters thick. Okay, so we've got that. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to create a sketch, and we're going to work off the top plane. I'm still setting some things up. So what I want is a rectangle, but I want a center rectangle. I'm going to work out from the center, and that's going to save us a lot of time and energy later on. You'll see, because one of the things I'm going to do here is rather than draw every component, we're going to use the mirror function quite a lot. So it's going to become very useful to be able to mirror around this central point. Okay, so I just clicked on the origin and I've moved out. Now, before I click again, you can see there that one of those boxes is highlighted. I'm just going to now type in, you'll see that the parameters start coming up. So tabletop width, then I'm going to press the Tab button. And I'm just going to roll my center mouse wheel to zoom out so I can see that next one down the bottom there. And again, I'm just going to go tabletop depth for that one. There we go, and we'll just press enter. So we've got that there. Okay, now we haven't quite sort of done the tabletop yet. What I want to do is I want to set up a location for the legs. Now on the project, there is going to be a chamfer underneath the tabletop. It's going to be approximately 40 millimeters wide. So we don't want to let the legs get any closer than 40 millimeters to the edge. So I'm going to use up here the offset tool, and you can see that there's some keyboard shortcuts starting to appear there. So you can see the keyboard shortcut for offset is O. So I'm going to just type O. Then I'm going to select, and I'm going to drag in so it knows which way to go. And I'm going to type minus 40 and then press enter. Now again, I could put a parameter in for that if I wanted to. You know, maybe I can add that later on if that's necessary. Okay, so we're kind of getting some things set up there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go with another rectangle. This time I don't need a center rectangle, so I can just go with a 2 point. And again, you can see the keyboard shortcut is the letter R. So I just type the letter R. I'm going to start down in this corner. Now I'm going to deliberately not hit on this line here. There is some logic to landing on that line because it will give me the dimension that I want immediately. But what it will then do, it will also put in a constraint that I don't want. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to click. No, I'm not going to click. I'm just going to hover up here. And then I'm going to just start typing in the parameter leg thickness. And then press tab and then same again. So if you want to move between dimensions, we just use the tab key, leg thickness, and then press enter. There we go. So we've got that in there. Now the other thing too, I'm just going to mention this word here for the moment. When all the lines go black, it means that they are fully constrained or defined. If they're not, they will remain blue. Now we'll get into that a little bit as we go. A lot of times it's critical to make sure that they are fully constrained. Sometimes it's not. In most cases, I'm going to try to make sure that everything is constrained in this project. It just means that if I change any of the parameters, everything else will adjust along with it. When they're not constrained, that's where things can start going wrong. Okay, so we want to finish that sketch now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to actually create the leg. So up here we've got our extrude tool. I'm just going to click on that section there, so left click there, and you'll see that it can go up or down, whichever way I want to go. So I want to go that way, and the leg is 600 millimeters long, but I'm going to use my leg length parameter. And there we go. Now over here, before we finish, in this case, we have this operation here where we can create a new body or we can create a new component. Now in this case, I'm going to make it a new component. I'll go into the difference between bodies and components as we go through. But a good way to think about it is if it is the thing that's going to exist in the real world in terms of how you're making it, it needs to be a component. So I'll go new component and OK, and we're finished. And I'm just going to go to fit, so it's all on the screen. So you can now see we have a leg there. Hasn't got all the features on it that we need yet. So then the next thing that we're going to do, in fact, what I'll do first is I'm just going to rename that. So right click on there, rename, and I'm just going to call it leg. Just makes things easier over here. The leg has tapers on the inside faces, so we need to start to construct those. So we need a new sketch, and we will work off this front face of the leg. Instead of selecting one of these sketch planes, we're just going to left click on the front face of the leg. I'm just going to pan that so it fits on the screen and use my center mouse wheel. Now I need a line, but again, the keyboard shortcut is the letter L. And I'm just going to draw a line anywhere from that side there and down. Now you'll see, I'll zoom in, it will tend to snap to the midpoint. We don't want that because it will cause us a problem, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm going to show you what the problem is and how you can solve it. Okay, so we've got our line. I need to put a dimension in at the top. So again, I've got my dimension tool, or D for dimension. And I want the line to stop 150 millimeters from the top of the leg. So I left click and then just type 150. I could put that in as a parameter if I wanted. Now down the bottom here, I want left over, once I cut my taper off, I want 22 millimeters left. But it gives me this problem here, and it's called an over-constrained sketch. And what it is, I'm just going to press cancel. What it is, it's got a constraint here which says this line will always meet at the middle of this line here, regardless of its size. But I don't want that. I want it to be 22.5 millimeters. So I need to get rid of this constraint. So I just press escape. Now I should be able to hover over it and you'll see it go blue. I'll left click on it and delete it. Okay, so I've gotten rid of that. So I can go D for dimension again. So I can put my dimension in. And I go 22. Now it's created another problem here. And basically in removing that constraint, this line is now not, doesn't have any relationship to this line whatsoever. So I've just got to put another constraint in, and that's called a coincident constraint. And all it means is that I want this line to meet with this line here. So press coincident, press on my little dot there, press there we go, we're fixed. Okay, so we can finish that sketch. So basically now we're going to cut this piece away. So we're going to use our extrude, come down, hover over this section here, and then it doesn't really matter how far we go, as long as the operation there is cut, which it will default to. And then we just go OK. So that's now done. Okay, so we need to put another taper on. So we're just going to go around to this outside. We're working off the outside faces. So again, new sketch, off that face. Just pan up again. So it'll be basically the same as before. L for line. Start up here somewhere. Go down here. This time I'm just going to avoid that midpoint because it'll just save me a little bit of time. D for dimension. So up the top, 150. Enter. Down the bottom here, 22. Enter. Finish the sketch. I'm just going to come around so we can look at that a little bit better. Do our extrude and just take off whatever we want. Make sure we go cut. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to use my little home tool. So we're going back to home. So that's our front left leg.